too.
Yeah.
So
let me bring a lawyer, Kpebu, on this matter, because you see, this case opens up a conversation about the position of the First Lady and Second Lady, because it is not constitutional. In fact, the Constitution doesn't recognize the office of First Lady, office of Second Lady, but yet we are spending the taxpayers' money running that office, right? And what they even have staff attached to them. Council.
Yes. Yeah, so that's it. So let's have the conversation properly, and then perhaps, now that we all know that no matter who comes into office in January 2025, as for this constitution, we must amend it, then we can look at what we would do to include them, so that at least there will be some legality. Because as you've said, practically they have their own offices, they have security guards, right? So many cars, etc. Obviously not from their husband's pockets, but from the state coffers. So if we've done this for so long, and we think that, yes, we should continue, and it appears we may have to continue, then let's do it. Let's do it, because you see, they do help their spouses in running the country. I mean, it's a fact, whether we like it or not, because there are certain places, if let's say the president doesn't attend and his wife does, it suffices in a way. I'm not saying everywhere, but there are some quarters. If the First Lady goes, they are happy that, okay, the First Lady is in there because they know that at least she can whisper a thing or two to the husband, right? And there are other places. So, like, let's say, you see the Rebecca Foundation, they did the mother and child maternity unit. They did Kpebu. Then they did, what you call Kumasi. So you see that companies are willing to go and give. Of course, it breeds corruption. Let's be very clear about that. So in doing it, we'll also make rules about where they receive funds. We don't want companies going there, because a lot of companies are looking for access to the president. So you easily, and it's so nauseating. It's breeding corruption and corruption and corruption. So in saying we want them to have offices, we'll make specific rules. They will not receive a dime directly from any companies. They will not. Because for me, if we are going to make any proposals for setting up their offices properly, and we don't include rules to prevent them from receiving donations from companies, then we might as well not do it, because then it means that we will just be formalizing corruption. And of course, we also put rules about if they misuse the funds, we will prosecute them. Okay. Yes, it should be comprehensive, because it shouldn't just be like, oh, they can be giving some funds to help in championing development, etc., and then we don't hold them accountable.
Some funds will even be sent there under the guise of...
Excellent.
You know.
Excellent. And we've seen that all too often in Ghana. So it's going to be a comprehensive, what do you call it, package. So if we should hear from them, if they think from experience they don't want that kind of public scrutiny and accountability, like some have been shown in recent times to have bought very expensive bags that are, this is what it's several times the income of very high-ranking people living in Ghana. Then you're like, these bags you are using today, when you're in opposition, could you afford those bags? Bags costing $20,000.
Bag among people who do not even care about the bags. They don't even value your bag.
But you know,
you must carry that bag among those who appreciate.
People have appreciated. A blogger did the story and saw that Second Lady like this, her bags cost several hundred thousands of that, the collection. A blogger did that story. It was so nauseating. I was like, you, in opposition, you're like, Bahama, when we are seeking in our mobile penny, today you come and your bags alone cost over $100,000.
Essentially, some measures must be put in place.
Yes. If those measures,
that office.
Yes, if those measures don't come, they will not agree for any funds to be sent to them. Okay. Yeah.
So you disagree with what the courts have said?
No, so what the court is saying is that there's no law to back. Okay. And we are saying that if you look at the US like this, they do a bit, okay? And some donations also come from the private sector, right? So if we want to, that's why I say let's have a broader discussion. Let's have it. But my key thing is that if we are going to fund them, then it would also come with so much on accountability. Because if we don't have an accountability package, no, there will be no funding. Otherwise, we will be legitimizing and actually even enhancing the corruption that they're already breeding.
I see. Do you also align with that proposal that this office of First Lady, Second Lady must be maintained, regularized, and also find a place to have it well defined within the Constitution? Because as it stands now, the Constitution does not at any point prescribe any office of First Lady or Second Lady, but we have it by convention, spending the taxpayers' money on it.
I haven't seen any constitution that has addressed the issue of first ladies and second ladies. I haven't seen any.
Anywhere in the world.
And I stand to be corrected. The U.S. Constitution is the simplest of all constitutions.
Yeah.
It has not addressed the office of a vice president and the wife of a vice president, the wife of a president. The British Constitution, I haven't seen this.
But do they do as our first ladies are doing?
If you allow me. I've seen other constitutions, even South African constitution. I've seen the Kenyan. I've read also even the Cameroonian constitution. I bring in the Cameroonian because of what we all understand. The Central African constitution, I've seen it. It doesn't. So why is it necessary for Ghana? But in all such constitutional arrangements, we have space for people who want to support private initiatives,
right,
and particularly humanitarian initiatives. And believe me, the wives of such country heads are all contributing in their own environment and even outside.
Right.
And they create human-centered institutions that are devoid of political influence. And for example, in America, the First Lady might create an NGO that will focus in an area of governance and will not depend on public finance. And in Ghana, we have also the rules and laws that control the creation of non-governmental organizations. And indeed, there are guidelines as to areas where you can operate and situations where you can even elicit funding support. So Ghana is not any different from the rest of the world. For us to create a law that says that the wife of Mr. So-and-so is covered by this law, and that indeed, for me, I was so saddened to hear that the Supreme Court didn't rule on the propriety of the extension of mandate of the committee to even consider wives of presidents and vice presidents. No, I didn't think that. I think the Supreme Court should have been emphatic in saying that nowhere in our Constitution has any provision been made to address such offices. So such offices, unknown to the Constitution, are deemed to be private offices. Simple.
Right.
And therefore will not have any means of soliciting for public finance. But again, the Constitution allows for the creation of non-governmental organizations, and there is freedom in directing your focus on any area of the society where you think that intervention is necessary.
Okay.
So, in the same vein, and as happened outside Ghana, first ladies are very important persons, and indeed they can also make their contribution to society. And because of the nature and the positions they hold, they have interaction with different kinds of people. And as Martin was saying, if it becomes a conduit for your access to the presidency, then again we may have compromised.
It is actually,
intent.
and it's been for
decades.
decades.
So look, in other jurisdictions, wives of presidents and vice presidents are professionals and doing their. You can see Obama's regime. Obama's wife is a lawyer. Is a Harvard-trained lawyer. Her work in the law and in practice, and never, although they were every now and again attending to public meetings and things like that, it was not from the office of or the coffers of the state.
The state.
You understand? So Ghana is no different for us to attempt to create a law. The laws as we have in Ghana are adequate.
Okay.
If we apply them appropriately,
right,
all these issues will be covered. And indeed, in respect of emoluments for presidential spouses, I think we don't need any law to that effect. And indeed, I'm very worried also when the Presidential Transitions Act attempts to introduce a word household and give an interpretation that extends the line of persons identified by the Constitution to include others who are not in the Constitution. When Constitution speaks and says that persons who qualify under Article so and so are A, B, C, D, I expect that the A, B, C, D are considered under that article without more. But when you create a new act, which also introduces another word that says household and gives interpretation to that household to include others who are not considered under the constitutional article, then it means that you are trying to bring some inconsistency into the Constitution, because the framers of the Constitution knew that presidents come from households. Nevertheless, and all of us come from household anyway. Mm-hmm. So if I attended an interview, I wanted to be employed, and I say I come with my household, and therefore my remuneration will have to consider my household, then everybody, and then my father will also come and say, I'm a farmer. My remuneration will have to be considered as the size of my household. No, but you are coming for that appointment, and they're looking at you as a person. That is what the Constitution looks at, persons, not households. Because household is ambiguous. Right. It is unqualified. So, and your household may be different from my household. So if I become president and I have a household of 8 wives, and then you also come. You also come as president.
I know you have.
And you have.
I know you have.
That is not correct. That is incorrect. No. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Stay on course.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong or not wrong. I'm saying it is incorrect.
Okay, that's fine.
And therefore, I don't have more than one.
Okay.
In any case, so I come in and I have one. Roxy comes in, he has 8. So we have interpretational problems.
How many sidekicks?
So let's not go there. Let's not create problems for ourselves.
Right.
And I want to believe that, in fact, if you even tested the consistency of the Presidential Transition Act in respect of the introduction of the word household in place of persons as defined under the Constitution, probably there could have been a constitutional position on this, because all laws pursuant to the Constitution ought to be consistent with it. So when Article 71 painstakingly identifies qualified persons, it is not within the ambit of any subsidiary law to seek to extend the definition of person to include household. So for me, I think that is there is some inconsistency there. But again, we need to also encourage our first ladies, second ladies to do humanitarian work. Mm-hmm. But the way to do it must be private,
right, and not
situated on government
purse.
If it becomes so, then there's no office created under law for that. So it cannot be used as another conduit to siphon money from.
Well, the Supreme Court has ruled the offices.
And the Supreme Court ruling, I want to believe that by inference, that question that Roxanne wanted answered. So when the Supreme Court says that the payment is unconstitutional, then by inference it means that the people who extended their mandate to include that, jumped the boundary.
Yes,
that is the implication.
Essential.
So let's take the implied meaning of the ruling to include the same. But I would have been happy if they had pronounced specifically on that.
Indeed. For example, if we want on this, because you see, now there are different sides to it. Proposals made as to what has to be done going forward. If the Constitution doesn't recognize these offices, then why keep them?
So it's been said, there is no constitutional provision to support the office of the wife of the president. And so if there is no constitutional provision, so be it. You know, J. Kufuor was a very conciliatory president. He was the one who set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. so that he felt that people could voice their dissatisfaction, how they've been maltreated, and the pains that they have gone through, they had suffered, from independence up to his regime. He felt that if people were allowed to voice some of these things out, and there is genuine reconciliation, then we can heal ourselves as a nation and move forward. Now, in the same vein, he also felt that some wives of former heads of state who had passed on into eternity were still struggling. And he didn't see why, as president who was so much interested in reconciliation, would look on for people who have helped the nation, people who have become heads of state of Ghana, for their wives to be suffering. And I thought it was purely a humanitarian gesture that was commendable and is still commendable. And on that score, I was thinking that it should have ended there. You don't extend a specific humanitarian gesture to help people confronted with a specific challenge to others who do not necessarily experience that challenge. So the idea of extending the courtesy of J. Kufuor to the wives of former heads of state who had passed, to include the wives of 7 presidents, I mean, was so bad. And you see, this is what we do to ourselves. Sometimes we tend to develop a certain subservient hero worshipping of our leaders, such that when we are given the power or mandate or opportunity to make certain recommendations to help governance, we make recommendations that rather, shore up or expand the frontiers of powers of these leaders to our own detriment. See, Inti Amwa Kpebu, a very respectable professor. I have a lot of respect for her. She is the woman who took me, who sponsored or helped my journey to the US as part of my PhD. So I have a lot of respect for her. But I think that to the extent that as a university professor, she would never recommend that, given the nature of the work that she's doing, the state must pay her husband. I don't see why you should make that recommendation for the president. Apia Kubi Andy here is a member of parliament who does a lot of work for Ghana. Nelson Roxen Dafiamakpo is been to court. I'm sure he funded the whole process himself and all that. Nobody is talking about their wives being funded by the state. So why do we all of a sudden develop a certain subservient hero worshipping of people who do not even deserve it? Because they get there and instead of serving us, they don't serve us. They serve themselves. They serve themselves. They are self-seeking. They are self-perpetuating. They are self-aggrandizing cabals. And yet, when we get an opportunity to make recommendations to help the governance process, instead of curtailing their powers, we want to make more recommendations as for we are beggars and we are always hero worshipping them. Look, the president, per the 1992 constitution, I've always argued, is like a political King Kong. The president has too many powers. And we should be thinking about curtailing powers and not be thinking about creating other avenues for the exercise of the executive powers. You see, if you hear people talk about these wives of certain presidents, they will tell you that these are very powerful people. These are very powerful people. These are very powerful people. We should be thinking as a nation, if you are not reviewing our constitution, we should be thinking about curtailing the exercise of powers and not be expanding the frontiers for the exercise of power. And I'm saying that if you pay that is the essence of constitutionalism. The idea of constitutionalism is curtailing the exercise of powers. Okay, so if we go with the idea that, well, let us pay first ladies and second ladies and all that, you are making them also powerful in a manner that expands the frontiers of the exercise of powers in Ghana. And I think that is not something that we have to condone. And so, if Professor Mills is dead, his wife is there, if he is not living well, if things are not good for him, and then the state, and the state wants to offer some assistance, I think that one is good. But not presidents who are working, okay, and are being paid. They are being paid well enough, and they have more than what it takes to take care of their wives.
Right.
If you're a president and you cannot take care of your wife, you are not worth your salt, you must resign. If you're a vice president and you cannot take care of your wife, you are not worth your salt, you must resign. Why we always, instead of saving money, we are always looking for avenues to spend. I'm not eyeing or I'm not attacking, or I'm not looking at any particular president's wife or vice president's wife. I'm just saying that it's a bad practice. We should be thinking about ways and means of saving money and using the money judiciously and wisely to bring about improvement in the physical quality of life. We should not be always thinking about avenues where we can dissipate and there will be leakages and slippages of public funds. The president of the republic is super paid well to be able to take care of his wife. And so any arrangement that extends what J. Kufuor did, okay, to that level of absurdity, and so you want to put the office of the First Lady also on the payroll and asking the taxpayers to pay for it. I mean, I think it is not good. It also expands the frontiers of the powers of the executive, and it is that, if that is condoned, then we are gradually weakening the idea of ensuring that we have constitutionalism. If that is condoned, it means we are shoring up the already expansive powers of the executive president. And I think that it's not something that we must condone. So, Nelson, Roxanne, congratulations. Thank you. Ghana thanks you. And then also, I believe that the ruling of the Supreme Court was in the right direction. And it's something that, so let us not hazard or be brainstorming the idea of regularizing it. I don't agree with Professor Yan or legislating to support it. I mean, I don't agree with that kind of proposal, because we must be thinking about curtailing the exercise of powers. We should not be creating other avenues where it says a first lady, if you want to go and see the president, you have to go and see the wife, and the wife is being funded, the wife is being paid, and so she also becomes so powerful. And I mean, this does not promote constitutionalism. It must not be condoned.
It must not be condoned. Thank you, gentlemen, from both the legal and governance perspective. I have three lawyers, the governance expert here, all making the proposals on what has to be done going forward. Thank you for this.